Hello, folks, and welcome back to another episode of the Daily Crypto Byte. Today is Friday, March 25th. Congratulations on making it through another week. It was a pretty exciting and eventful week. As we speak now, we're retesting that critical 45K level, so finishing the week on a strong note here. Plenty to talk about before we get started. CJ, how you doing today, my friend?
Doing well, Monty. Obviously, it's nice to see some bullish price action. Still feels like there is a lot of disbelief, however, though, in this particular rally, and excited to go through a couple metrics to see potentially why. But how are you doing, my friend?
Yeah, doing well, doing well. Like you said, there are some weird things happening with this rally. Things we don't see often with a genuine rally from the bottom. We have lots of red flag assets rallying, as you put it yesterday, I believe, and that continues to make some people believe that this rally will not be sustained. But that being said, the Luna Foundation continuing to put those buys in. Another one came in, another $125 million buy. They're now up to almost $1 billion worth of Bitcoin purchased just this week alone. Like Do Kwon said, they're planning to get that number to 3 billion. So still some steady buy pressure yet to come in here, CJ, and market responding favorably. So plenty to talk about, like I said. I'll pass back to you to get started with some charts here.
I want to start out with an oldie but a goodie, and that is the fear and greed index. So, just a basic point we'd like to make here before going into price analysis is looking at the relative sentiment of what we've seen in price, even amongst our recent increase up into 45K. We still remain in a cluster of fear, similar to the levels in which we saw these pullbacks relative to last summer. So we really haven't been getting that peak of euphoria just yet. And I wonder, let's see if we zoom in. I mean, we actually are more fearful at this particular point than we were during the previous two rallies at 45K, because people are like, all right, we have some bullish price action. We're back. We're going to start rallying up into the 50s. And now, after we've had those two rejections, people are a little bit more reluctant to say, oh, well, we have to break through this time. That's quite interesting. You can see the fear was pretty much getting towards the most strong at the far points of the decline in the summer as well. So interesting metric there. Also, when you look at unrealized profit and loss, it's not as if we're in peak euphoria by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, we're still at a level of optimism or denial in terms of like unrealized profit and loss. And we're actually below the unrealized profit and loss compared to what we saw in the summertime lows. And that's relative because, people bought this rally. They bought in early when we were at 30K levels. And so they weren't really that underwater this time around. However, during the second rally, people bought 60K with the anticipation that we were going to, go to 100. So now they are still very underwater, and we still have a lot of negative sentiment and a lot of denial and disbelief in this particular rally. If we go over to Bitcoin and look at some critical levels, we are now officially making a higher high for the first time since March 2nd. So ideally, what you want to see from the bullish perspective is a continuation. We do have some critical resistance coming in at roughly the 48K level. That's really the next critical level I would be looking for if we get a close above 45K today. But you would want to see some type of a rally up into that level and ultimately back test and flip this level from resistance prior to now new support with a bounce higher. If that doesn't happen, say we don't get the close above, say, we create a higher high, everybody gets bullish, but then we start to come down. The critical level that must hold, obviously is the ascending level we've been watching this entire time. It's good to see the 20 smooth moving average, though, is coming up, looking to act as good support right at the 42 to 43K level. As we've seen historically, that acted as, really good resistance. On many times, we actually have back tested a couple times as well as support. But if we get that level to flip, specifically 43, with a back test, that is very bullish as well. It adds even more bullish construction and a fourth higher low to the overall ascending triangle that we've been looking at. From a longer term perspective, what I think is very cool right now is the fact that we are actually in the bull market support band and are actually getting above the top level, specifically, 21-week EMA. So, or actually 20-week EMA or 20-week SMA. So we still have 2 days and 10 hours left on this candle, but if we close into this level and are finally able to break above, form two bullish engulfing candles in a row into our bear market resistance band, that shows that ultimately the momentum in the trend is starting to appear somewhat like it was here when we first broke back into it. So that's a level I'm really looking at towards a breakout. If we close and have a bullish engulfing at the end of the week, I think that's a great sign for the bulls. And another thing you'll notice is like these bands, the bandwidth is pretty wide at that particular point. Right now, they're getting really tight because we've just had such a lack of volatility and continuous rejection, one after the other in terms of these wicks. But now, for the first time in months, we're actually breaking through this level with some strength and looking to actually add some stopping power or staying power. So we can go into some other charts, perhaps the S&P or other things of that sort. But let me know what you think, Monty. Interested in your thoughts as well.
Yeah, plenty to talk about here today. One thing, in the traditional markets that is garnering a lot of attention today is the 10-year Treasury yield. I know Bob pointed this out in the chat. It is at 2.45%. I mean, these are levels that we haven't seen since 2019. And ultimately, this is the weekly chart here, CJ. I mean, looking at this chart, it does look like we still have room to run. I mean, most times when we look at this chart, we're looking at it from like a daily perspective where it's like, wow, we are, incredibly overextended. But really, in terms of like a macro perspective, in terms of what we've seen over the last, 3 or 4 years, we still could potentially, climb up into the 3% range and beyond. So, what that means for Bitcoin, it's hard to say exactly for sure, but it is encouraging to see that today, despite the TNX being up, significantly, Bitcoin is up as well. And if we look at what this is like, this relationship between the TNX and Bitcoin over the last couple of years here, as you can see, there's been a somewhat, positive correlation between the performance of the TNX and the performance of Bitcoin. So when the TNX, starts to turn up, it does, often lead to some positive price action in Bitcoin as well. Well, actually, you can see here, Bitcoin is kind of acting as a leading indicator for that turn up of the TNX, but still both of them tend to, trend positive around the same time. So the fact that we're seeing the TNX rise to this extent, breaking into new local highs here, looking like it could potentially come up to retest the 3% level. I think, all of that is, very, very important stuff to take note of. And, just again, getting back to Bitcoin from a weekly chart perspective, CJ, I think you did a nice job of pointing this out yesterday. But again, we are right up at this critical level. In fact, breaking above it now. 45K is a lot more than just a critical level on the daily time frame. It also is on the weekly time frame as well. As you can see here, we've had a couple of different instances over the last 2 months where strong sell pressure has come in at the 45K level. That's evident from these large wicks. That is typically strong profit taking on the back of short-term speculation. But on this retest of this level, which also coincides with the 20-period smooth moving average, we are sustaining these prices. We're sustaining this price action. Buyers are stepping in, and that's allowing us to kind of maintain these levels. So that's what I want to see. Like just like CJ said about the daily chart, that's what I want to see with the weekly chart as well. Reclaiming this 45K level, this 20-period SMMA, and allowing it to act as support, which has been formerly resistance. You can see that's happened in the past as well. When we broke out of that summer bear market, this level was acting as strong resistance. We broke out and flipped it to support, which allowed us to trend higher. I want to see the same thing here. And this sustained buy pressure that's coming in today, I think, is a step in the right direction. So good stuff coming in there. And, a lot of that has to do with what we're seeing in traditional equity markets as well. So lots to talk about. It's been a crazy week. I'm excited to hear what some of the traditional analysts have to say tonight on the cocktail hour. But yeah, some very nice price action here as we wrap up the week. What else are you looking at here on this Friday, CJ?
There's a lot of stuff, a lot of interesting coins moving. We were talking about Rune earlier, how it's up like 14, 15% off of an interesting move, maybe an interesting scalp. Serum's price action last week has been really, really interesting after just being completely beat down for months. But yeah, ultimately, I think that point of, the 10-year going up quite drastically, yet Bitcoin still being able to perform well. I mean, I think it shows you that Bitcoin is just like an asset that is very dictated by its own price action in terms of like how it can trend and build momentum. And we'll see. Dan Moorhead of Pantera wrote a long article on why he thinks that Bitcoin is one of the best assets to hold during a rising rate environment. And we'll see if that comes true. But I think there's definitely certain reasons for it. And now to see some really interesting performance in spite of that 10-year going parabolic, that's pretty good for the Bitcoin case, I would have to say. Normally, like months ago, last year, I remember when John used to be on the show talking about the TNX. When it would rise, Bitcoin would get killed. But right now, it's not really having too much of an impact. But
Yes, that narrative was so much stronger before the whole Russia-Ukraine war. People were so focused on the Fed rate hikes, but now it seems like that's kind of been shaken off, and just the positive news is driving price higher. So even with rising TNX, like you said, very encouraging to see Bitcoin continuing to climb here. There is, some strong sell pressure at the 45K level. That's to be expected with a, critical resistance level, especially when we've had a move like we've had over this last week. That being said, we are approaching this level with some pretty sufficient momentum. So going to be interesting to see, what happens over the weekend here as, typically volume thins out a little bit, but still plenty of time left to go on this Friday here to see if we can reclaim this 45K level. What?
it sounds like you have a dump truck pulling up.
Oh, yeah, I think
Anyways,
I do.
Yeah, the thing that I think is interesting as well, that might be an opportunity, is that Bitcoin obviously has got a lot of resistance. We've obviously had a lot of alts that have ran quite well, like Ethereum Classic. We've had stocks like AMC, GME do really violent rallies. A lot of Robinhood traders getting back and trading crypto assets like ADA, assets like ETC. So that obviously could mean that things are getting a little bit heated or overbought in the short term. But overall, I think when you look at some of the alts like, Solana, it's still off its high by over 50%, over, 55, 59% roughly. And so, the fact that they haven't like really gone yet, but Bitcoin's kind of been leading the way. Usually we have like Bitcoin lead the way in new rallies for fundamental reasons. And then once the party kind of gets going, a lot of the alts really start to go parabolic as well. So the fact that they haven't gone yet and you still can buy them, 50%, 60% off their highs, I think is quite interesting and definitely something to take a look at if we get a further breakout in Bitcoin.
Yeah, definitely worth a look. Last thing I do want to say is just I want to take a look at Bitcoin on a shorter time frame here because we are pressing up against that critical 45K level and seeing a little bit of profit taking. But one thing that's been really evident in this week's market is just kind of this pattern that's been emerging where we come up, make a strong move, and rather than being promptly rejected like we've seen in the past with other strong moves to the upside where the buy pressure that drove us to that level is met with equal sell pressure to drive us back to where we came. Now we're seeing buy pressure step in to match the profit taking each time we go up. So you see this large extension, often on the back of, 3 or 4 candles making a strong move. Then you'll see a flattening out of price. It gives the 20-period smooth moving average some time to catch up. Price kind of flattens out. Sometimes we do see a little bit of sell pressure that, drives us back down a bit, but ultimately you'll see those buys come back in. And again, the sell pressure is somewhat mitigated by buyers stepping in. We climb higher. You saw it one more time here just last night where we kind of consolidated around this 44K range. And then again, this morning shot up higher. So one thing I think is a possibility is perhaps some consolidation below 45K. This 20-period smooth moving average catching up to it, kind of like we saw here just last night. and then ultimately, a continued climb higher. Because even though we are seeing somewhat modest profit taking here at this 45K level, still holding up well, buyers stepping in, telling me that there is enough buy pressure still at this level to kind of mitigate the profit taking from short-term holders. So that's just kind of been the trend of this last week in terms of what we've seen on shorter term timeframes. And I think that's something that could definitely, happen here at this critical 45K level. So watch for a breakout above that level and perhaps a retest of it, like CJ mentioned earlier. I think that is a clear pattern that could lead to positive price action and not just Bitcoin, but a lot of the alts as well. So just something to keep on your radar.
Thank you guys for watching. If you would like to see more about our trade setups and things that we might be buying or selling today, you can check out the link in the description below to join the Market Rebellion crypto trading community. Also, please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content you saw here today. We really appreciate that. It helps us quite a bit. Hope you have a wonderful day in the world wherever you are, and we'll catch you guys